Hey, what's the deal, YouTube? It's your girl, Miss Honey. Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It is your girl, Miss Honey, here with episode 9 of Showtime's Your Honor. This is season 1 of the show. Episode 10 is already out. I have done the review slash recap slash discussion for episodes 1 through 8. And I wanted to split 9 and 10 up because I know that we were building to this crescendo. And I know that there's a lot of emotions around this show. So I wanted to really be thoughtful about the meatier episodes. 9 and 10. I haven't seen 10 yet, obviously, because I want, my reviews and my discussion to be as organic as possible. So I've not seen any reviews out there. If you're looking for additional reviewers of this show, as far as I know, outside of myself, the only other person that I know of, or the only other channel that I know of that's reviewing this show is Random TV Reviews, which is Lynette and Stanley. So you guys go ahead and check them out. I did get a notification that their episode 10 review is up. Obviously, I've not watched it because you guys know I don't watch other people's reviews before I've done my own, so that I am not influenced by their thoughts. I want you guys to always get my thoughts as organically as possible. So let's get into this episode. We see where Carlo's friend Joey, Maldini, I think is his name, is on the run. We are some 3 months in now on this trial situation. And so he is on the run because we find out that although Carlo had the $150K that he got from the Desire crew on him, it was Joey that went upstairs to get the drugs. And when Carlo was arrested in the lobby of his family hotel, Joey took off running with the drugs. And he's been using those drugs. Quite obviously, he has not been selling those drugs. He's been using those drugs. Remember, the fentanyl drug is in a patch form, and Carlo, he purposefully slapped a patch onto Joey, and Joey's in a way now. Like, he's pretty much strung out on these drugs. The drugs are all gone, but the Baxter gang, they're trying to recover these drugs because they can recover these drugs. They can at the very least give them, I guess, to the Desire crew and hopefully absolve some of the mess that Carlos caused in his few short days out of Angola prison. Well, they have discovered him. They have found him. And just as he's coming in, he hears the downstairs door kicked open, and he jumps out of his bedroom window, down the roof, hanging off the side. He lets go and lands wrong on his ankle and breaks his ankle. And then he drags that broken ankle and that, crooked foot across the street where he sees 2 police officers, flags them down, and gets himself taken into custody. When he gets into custody, we see where he is talking with the prosecuting attorney, the attorney that's prosecuting Carlo, his best friend. And also we see Costello there. We know that Costello, like Django, has got her nose in every little bitty thing, every little piece and part of this story. Now he's strung out, he's dirty, he's sweaty, he's going through withdrawal. He's obviously been out of these drugs for a minute, and he tells of how much he knows about the whole Kofi Jones situation. He knows that his friend has killed Kofi. Well, how do you know this, Joey? I know this because he told me that he cracked his head open like a watermelon. He knows that Carlo was able to kill Kofi because of Gina Baxter. This is Mrs. Baxter. And how she orchestrated for him to be put into OPP, which is the jail that Kofi was in, thanks to his help and obviously a good deal of money. The prosecuting attorney, she gets all of this on tape on her phone, and she goes before the court. Judge Desiato, the Baxters are there, as well as Costello and obviously Carlo and his attorney and the jury. And she tells court that she's got a witness. Now, immediately the defense attorney stands up and he says, oh, no, all witnesses have to be disclosed, and this wasn't disclosed. And she announces that this witness kind of fell in her lap. She lets him know that he is a close friend of the family. She lets them know what his name is and the fact that he is in this place where he needs some help and is willing to tell all that he knows about the Kofi Jones situation. Now, the caveat to this is that as much as he knows about the Kofi Jones situation, he knows that much more about the family organization and their crime dealings. And so it is the hope of Costello that she will be able to not only use this witness to nail Carlo Baxter to the wall for Kofi Jones, but also to be able to bag the Baxters and their entire organization and get them off of the street with his help afterwards. Well, you can just imagine that this news causes the Baxters, the defense attorney, Carlo, and even Judge Desiato to pee their pants. I mean, Judge Desiato's in a hard place because he needs to figure out a way to let Carlo go without impugning his own good name and integrity. Now, you and I both know this is going to be impossible to do because of all of the extenuating circumstances, but it's going to just make it that much harder. We've got a bona fide witness in order for him to kind of finesse the jury and finesse the situation in order to let Carlo Grease by. Also, Judge Desiato is trying his very best. He has a disdain and a gall for the Baxters as well. He doesn't really want Carlo to be let go. He's still feeling as though he's somehow better than the Baxters, even though he's gotten down in the mud and he's wallowed against his will or no. He has wallowed, and he still feels like he's better than them and he may be able to somehow outsmart them, but this is going to make it exponentially harder. Judge Desiato calls for a recess. He decides he needs to think about this whole situation. They need to take a moment and look at all things. But before he can really take a look at this whole Joey Maldini witness situation, he gets a visit from Costello. Costello has been doing her own investigation. We saw in episode 8 where she came across some photos of a gentleman that all we have is a hat with a small insignia on it, some writing on it, I believe. And then he's got his hand up so you can't see his face, but we do know that Robin, Judge Desiato's wife, was a photographer and she took a lot of pictures in urban settings. So this gentleman is a black gentleman. She knows after going through some other photos and doing some research that it is this gentleman she thinks was having an affair with Robin, Judge Desiato's wife. And we all know by now, 9 episodes in, Costello is not the most subtle. She's not the most gentle person in terms of approach and how she handles a situation. She's a bull in the china shop. And when she confronts Judge Desiato with all of this information, he confirms. He knows that Robin was having an affair. Costello wants him to do something about it. Like, she wants him to give her the full thumbs up to fully investigate this guy in this situation, because this is how possibly Robin could have ended up murdered if she was having an affair with this individual. And so Judge Desiato doesn't want to discuss it right now. He doesn't want to talk about it right now. And she just doesn't understand why. Why don't you want to discuss this? Because you don't want it to come out that Robin had an affair? No, I don't want to discuss this because of Adam. She says, well, just tell Adam. Really, Costello? Really? Is that what we're doing here? She's seeing being able to close the case. She is not as emotional. She is not as emotionally invested on the Adam side. I think she is extremely emotionally invested on the Judge Desiato side. I stand by the fact that I think that she has a little bit of an eye for Judge Desiato. But she doesn't really know necessarily how to read the room, and she doesn't have the necessary empathy to understand why he could possibly not want this to get out, especially to Adam. She then later takes it upon herself to go to Elizabeth, who is Judge Desiato's mother-in-law, the mother of deceased Robin, the grandmother of Adam, and lays it all out for her, makes her aware that Robin was having this affair, and makes her aware of the implication of this affair as it pertains to her murder. And Elizabeth wants to know if Michael knows about the affair, and Costello confirms that he does. And she also confirms that Adam doesn't know. And it is in this moment that Elizabeth realizes that what Costello wants is for her to go and tell Adam that his mom was having an affair, and all of the implications of that information. It's overstepping her bounds for sure, talking about Costello. She sees it as closing a case, solving a case. She doesn't really know the full fallout that could come from it. Even if there was no Baxters and no Rocco and no hit and run and no deadly web of lies going on, still the implication is a heavy one, right? Judge Desiato, while all of this is going on with Costello and Elizabeth, is taking a ride with the Celtic security guard of the Baxters. The security guard is taking Judge Desiato down to the place where Rocco was killed. There we find Mr. Baxter, and Judge Desiato goes over and he talks with Mr. Baxter. And Mr. Baxter wants to know once again if Rocco was alive when he left him there. And Judge Desiato once again says, no. Are you sure? No, he was definitely dead. He tells Judge Desiato that Joey must not testify. He's got to go. That is a non-negotiable. He calls the Celtic security guard over, and he comes over, and the security guard sort of lays it out for him how it's going to happen. We're going to kill Joey Maldini, and you're going to help us do that. You're going to help us orchestrate that. And Judge Desiato says, here's what we're going to do. And so he lays out the plan for now what would be his 7th body through his whole web of deceit and lies. He says, I am going to allow Joey Maldini to testify. And Mr. Baxter screws his face up. He is like, dare you? No, listen to me now. I'm going to let him testify. There's no way around that. He says, but then you have your son's attorneys stand and say that he needs a recess in order to prepare for his cross. And then I'm going to grant that. And then you at that time can do whatever it is you need to do. And Mr. Baxter and the Celtic security guard decides, okay, this sounds good. We can work with that. Judge Desiato then goes back to the courthouse, and when he comes up the steps, he sees there on the steps vaping is Costello. And he begins to talk to her about the importance of Joey Maldini, the importance of having Joey Maldini as a subsequent witness to her investigation into the Baxters, how important he is in order to bring down that organization, and how important that is to her career. He asks her a little bit of information about what all Joey Maldini may know, and she's careful. She is careful, but she does let him know that he does know a whole lot more than just what went on with Kofi Jones. And he tells her that she can always come to him and confide in him at anytime she wants to talk about this. But he does encourage her to pursue that to bring down the Baxter organization. But when he goes inside of the courthouse after talking with Costello, she sees the Celtic security guard and Mr. Baxter walking up to the courthouse, and she runs down on them and tells them that she's got her good eye on them. She's not going to let them intimidate or hurt Michael or Adam in any kind of way. Now, they know who Michael is. Michael is Judge Desiato's first name, but Adam, who is Adam? Oh, you very well know who Adam is, and just know that I'm not going to let it happen. And she brushes past them. They immediately look up who Adam is to Judge Desiato and discover that he is Judge Desiato's son. They go immediately to his social media and realize that he is friends with Sophia, Baxter's daughter. And just like that, Costello makes them aware of who Adam is to Judge Desiato and to Fia. This is the Adam that Fia is so enthralled with right now. Seems like a detrimental faux pas on Costello's side, but it actually may work in Desiato's favor. Not sure yet, but here it is. We go into the courtroom and we see where Judge Desiato does exactly what he says he's going to do. He decides after contemplation that he needs to make sure that Joey Maldini can in fact take the stand. If he is well enough to take the stand. He knows that he's on drugs really bad. He knows that he is going through withdrawal, and he wants to make sure that he is capable to take the stand. After the prosecuting attorney assures him that he can in fact take the stand, that she's verified that he's good to go, Judge Desiato says, let me be the judge of that. And he says, I'm going to meet with him in my chambers, social distancing and whatnot. It's only he, Judge Desiato, Alan, his bailiff, and Joey in the chambers. And Judge Desiato does what he does best. One thing we've learned in this season is that Michael Desiato is a skilled manipulator. Okay? Skilled manipulator. He begins to talk to Joey about, first he's empathizing with him about his swollen ankle, the fact that he can't even put a shoe on, his boot back on that foot. And he also tells him that he doesn't have to be nervous. I understand that you're nervous, and I get nervous at times as well. And one thing that I do when I get nervous is I have a sip of water and take a deep breath and have a sip of water and it helps with the nerves. He asks Alan, the bailiff, to give him a glass, and then there's a pitcher there on the table between the two of them, and he pours a glass of water, slides it towards him. And he continues to talk about the boot and the ankle and what's going to happen when they go into the court case. And he says, you can't even put your boot back on, you poor dear. You look like you might be around about my size. And he pulls a pair of sneakers out there and he gets down on his knees and he unties the boot that is on and takes Joey's foot out. And Joey is like, what is going on? I've never had a judge get down on all fours and help me with my boots, my shoes, handle my feet. You know, it's a little weird. Now, it's coming across very humble. It's coming across very sensitive. It's coming across very empathetic from Judge Desiato's side and to Joey. And so he puts that shoe on, and then the broken ankle foot, he lifts it, and Joey winces and you know, empathy, puts that foot in the shoe and ties it up, you know. And the next thing that we see is Desiato is back on the bench. Joey is there and he announces that he has talked with Joey and he feels that he is more than capable of, you know, sitting in the witness stand and testifying. He's going to allow it. Immediately, the defense attorney stands up and says, Your Honor, I need a recess. I need to call a recess in order for me to prepare for cross-examination, please. And Judge Desiato immediately says, no, I'm not going to allow that. And the Baxters and Carlo and the defense attorney are aghast. What? Yeah, we had a plan, right? We had an agreement. This is how it was going to go down. This is how we were going to get rid of this witness. Immediately, they decide that today, right now, this is happening and Joey's going to testify. And so the prosecution attorney stands up and she begins, and he tells her how long he had known Carlo, how much he loved the family. They kind of took him in, that he came from the wrong side of the tracks, and how they always had lots of food to eat in their fridge and name brand sodas, and how close he was to the Baxters and to Carlo, and how much he really, really liked them and liked being a part of the family. He's not really able to get into any meaty things regarding Kofi Jones because he's continually drinking this water. And the more he drinks, the more sweaty and out of sorts he becomes. And it gets so bad that they have to stop talking with him and call an EMT. And it looks like he's having a type of drug-induced withdrawal episode. And Judge Desiato immediately calls for the EMT and asks for the jurors to get out of there. And they're going to, of course, take him out of there and take him down to county. Judge Desiato, when he went home, looking for Adam, or under the guise of looking for Adam, gives Django his meds and swipes a few pills. He has literally poisoned Joey Maldini in order to save his life. And this is not one of the most egregious things that we've seen Judge Desiato do, but it's right up there, right? Now, it's supposed to look like he's a good guy in terms of, yeah, he could possibly have saved Joey's life in order for there to be a later court case and give Costello the opportunity to bring these charges against the Baxter organization using Joey's help. Or he could have just killed this guy by poisoning him, or the Baxters could just kill Joey anyway. Like, all that he's doing to make things right is equally as bad as all of the blatantly wrong things that he has done. I mean, here is an individual who is piling on and piling on and piling on. We all know the very best way to get out of a hole is to stop digging. Judge Desiato is a digger. And then we see where Judge Desiato is now apologizing to the jurors and saying that it was his mistake. He thought that Joey was able to stand to be on the witness stand and to testify, but he realizes now that he was much sicker than he had assessed. And he wants them to forget everything that Joey said, even though he didn't really say much except testifying to how much he loved and how close he was to the Baxters. And he says, this is not going to be a viable witness. Strike everything that he said from the record. Act as if Joey Maldini never existed. And this sort of satiates Mr. Baxter. And in this moment, after he says this, we see the disappointment on the prosecuting attorney's face, and we see the disappointment on Costello's face. But also in this moment, we get to see where Judge Desiato shows just the glimmer of guilt and shame when he darts his eyes up and looks at Baxter for a moment, and Baxter looks back at him like, as long as he don't testify, fine. Now, it doesn't mean that he's not going to get killed at some point down the road, but Judge Desiato has thwarted the plan to kill Joey, this seventh body of blood on his hands. But this glance that Costello sees, she sees it. She sees it, and she is aware now of some sort of connection between Judge Desiato and Mr. Baxter. Now let's talk about our loose ends. Fia and Adam are at a cafe when Franny comes in, and Adam spots her first at the counter getting coffee and a small bit to eat. And she comes over and subtly, unbeknownst to Fia, uncovers and unravels Adam's own tangled web of deception that he's weaving. Through pleasant conversation, she sort of shames Adam for claiming his undying love haphazardly to her. And at the same time, she unfurls just to him because, again, Fia is not aware the sickness in what Adam is actually doing. If we remember now, Fia is Rocco's sister. Rocco is the young man that Adam killed in episode 1 during a hit and run. Later, we get to see where Franny meets up with Adam to talk privately. And she tells him earnestly, she really does tell him, it seems like to me earnestly, that what he thinks and is feeling is not really what he really thinks and is feeling. Like, you feel like this relationship that you started with Fia is somehow going to absolve you of all wrongdoing as it pertains to Rocco, but it isn't. It's not going to absolve your guilt at all. And if you guys remember from episode 1, the small exchange outside of the actual accident that Rocco and Adam had was quite traumatic. I can't imagine that Adam is not still waking up to Rocco coughing out blood out of his mouth into his ear and onto his mouth and onto his face. Seeing Rocco take his last breath, fumbling to speak. I can't imagine that he's not thinking about that when he goes to sleep every night. And him having a relationship with Fia is not going to absolve any of those things. I feel like this is what Franny is trying to tell him. She lets him know that this so-called love that he has for Fia is something else. And he thinks that she's sort of low-key threatening him. He thinks that this is jealousy. He is too young and too naive. What do they used to say? Young, dumb, and full of. He thinks this is what it is. He doesn't realize the deeper implications, or he hasn't allowed himself to think about the deeper implications of it. He thinks basically she is jealous, and when she says that she is not jealous and that this is not right and this will not work, that she is somehow low-key threatening him. Charlie is the dumbest of them all. He's Adam's godfather, okay, and also a mayoral candidate. I don't understand how. He's not particularly bright. And I just get, from this whole scene with Charlie, I just get, wow, really? Adam, after talking to Franny, goes to Charlie and confides in Charlie about Franny and who she really is, his teacher, and the fact that he had been having an affair with her, and the fact that he is now seeing a new girl. He doesn't want Franny anymore. He wants the new girl. Charlie is proud of Adam for being able to juggle two women and have two women fighting over him, so to speak. He tells Adam that he understands and that he will take care of the situation. And Adam tells him sternly, no, I've got it. I'll take care of it. I don't need your help. Charlie goes ahead and takes matters into his own hands against Adam's wishes. And after threatening Franny's freedom, he rolls up on her basically at a bar, talks to her like he's a friendly gentleman, and she kids with him about, are you coming on to me or are you trying to get my vote? Which one? And Charlie gets real serious with her and basically lets her know he knows who she is and he knows the crime that she's committed, and he threatens her low-key, subtly threatens her freedom and her livelihood. And in this moment, Franny stands up for herself and she realizes Adam has talked to him, but she wants to know if Adam has told him everything. And he was like, oh, yeah. I know everything that's going on. And I'm telling you, this isn't up for discussion. You need to back off. You need to let this go. You need to let Adam go. And she says, oh, okay. So you do know that what Adam is going through in terms of having left a body on the side of the road, bleeding and dying. And Charlie is aghast. He can't even cover it up. Now, he's a real ham. He's a real schmoozer, a mover and a shaker, man of the people, finesser. But he can't even cover it up. He had no idea until this moment that it was Adam that killed Rocco on the side of the road and not Judge Desiato. How? How, Sway? That's all I could say to myself. How, Sway? How is it that you didn't know, Charlie? You didn't know because you're so busy around here shucking and jiving. You're so busy around here buck dancing for Judge Desiato and his senator mother-in-law that you haven't even taken a moment to invest your time into your energy into what really happened to Kofi Jones. How this all really played out. You so busy sweeping it under the rug and running for mayor's office that you haven't even done even the slightest bit of investigation. Costello and Lee have done more investigating and have involved themselves, and they weren't even directly connected to Kofi Jones. How, Sway? How? This is what I was telling y'all. This is why I don't care for Charlie. I don't care for Charlie. You know, I root for everybody black, but Charlie, this is the way you've handled yourself. I zero respect. And you didn't even put 2 and 2 together. You didn't even put 2 and 2 together. If you had to even question Judge Desiato about leaving this boy dead on the side of the road, you would have found out that it was actually Adam. Perhaps. Let's move on to our next loose end, and that is Lee and Eugene. Eugene has a real chance, you guys, of getting up and out of the game. He's super bright, really, really bright. We know this because he goes to Big Mo after turning in his money for the day, some upwards to $9,000 he's made in a day of slinging drugs out underneath the bridge. And he tells her that he wants to do more. You know, he's got a head for numbers and a head for math. He can't do it on paper, but he does it over and over and over again in his head. And it comes real easy to him that way. And he tells her that he wants to do more. He wants to maybe do some finance, working on the money side. She sends everyone out of the room except for Lil Mo, and she asks him what he's talking about, and he tells her it's a church down the way that needs a new roof, and you could front them the money up front, the cash, to get the roof fixed and have them pay you back in a legit check. He says it's a ton of churches around there that she could do that with in order to clean the money, to wash the money, and to make the money legit. And she says, "Oh, okay, you're smart. You're and she looks at Lil Mo, and Lil Mo says, Stephen Hawking. You are Stephen Hawking, mother ducker, huh?" He's proud of that she noticed that about him. And later on, we get to see not only that he's bright, but we get to see where his reserved side comes into play, because he is drinking some lean with Lil Mo, which is just the beginning of the end. Like, we've got to get him away from them at this point, because he's going to be good and strung out by the time he gets done with the Desire crew. Lil Mo is making lean, and he's kind of highish, drunkish more than anything, sitting there talking to Lil Mo, and Lil Mo says, "Yeah, you smart, huh? You a smart little mother ducker, huh?" And Eugene just listens, tells him how, Rudy was worried about us bringing you in and taking you in. He thought you was gonna be a problem. And Eugene just says nothing. He says, "No, but I told him how smart you are and how useful you're going to be to the crew. It was a good thing taking you in." And the only thing that Eugene says is, "Who Rudy?" When he says that, Lil Mo kind of turns to him and says, he moves on past it some sort of way, and so does Eugene. So he's bright and he's reserved enough to listen more than he talks. And that way he learns a lot more. And also he has Lee. Having Lee in his corner is going to be just what he needs in order to pull himself up out of the game and position himself in a place where he doesn't have to live this life. He doesn't have to have his situation end up like Kofi or his mother. Lee has gone through her mail and discovered that she's gotten actually a report from the Department of Education, and it's Kofi's GED report. And she probably was going to use all of this in the case, all of this information in the case, in order to get Kofi's case dropped, the guilty plea dropped. Now she's getting it some months after he has been killed, and she opens it and she looks and she sees where he didn't pass. But more importantly, she sees the date and the time that he took the GED test. So she meets with Eugene and she tries to talk with him about it, and she shows him this is Kofi's GED results. And do you see what it says here? And Eugene says, it says he failed. And she said, yes, he did fail. But at the time he was failing the GED exam, Rocco was being killed on the side of the road. There is no way that Kofi could have killed Rocco because he was failing the GED exam. She says, who could have been driving? Do you know who could have been driving? And Eugene was like, oh, I don't know. Rudy? And she says, Rudy? Who is Rudy? And he shakes his head a little bit and he thinks a little bit and he goes ahead and he confides in her. He says, I was talking with little Mo yesterday and he mentioned this guy named Rudy. And she says, tell me more. What did he say? He says, I don't know. I don't remember because I have been drinking. Now, this is a moment of wavering because he's got a right now roof over his head and a right now source of income, right? And what you got right now, that bird you got in your hand right now is worth more than a possible, two in the bush later. But he goes ahead and he decides that he is going to trust her. And he tells her what he does remember about the conversation that Rudy was concerned about bringing him on board and about including him into the organization, that he may be a possible problem. And she takes this information and goes back to her old assistant from her old job, which she no longer works at, calls in a favor, and she runs the name Rudy against the arresting officers for Lil Mo, and finds out that every time Lil Mo was arrested, he was not charged, he was let off, and this was the arresting officer. And she says to the assistant, why would this be? And the assistant said, either Lil Mo is a snitch, meaning a police informant, or the police officer is crooked, or both. It's a moment for Lee. It's a moment really for Eugene because he is so bright and because he does have Lee fighting for him and his family and his deceased family's legacy. He has Lee fighting for him. Here is an opportunity for God to give Eugene beauty for all of the ashes, okay, that he has been born into as a black male. And I love it. I love every minute of it, you guys. I really, really do. But let's move on. Let's talk about Fia and the Baxters. Fia comes into the house and the Baxters have brought the family priest to wash Fia's brain back to their side of the cult, right? It's okay for you to believe blindly as long as it's what we're teaching you, as long as it's what we taught you. Mr. Baxter knows now about Adam, and he is choosing to tread lightly with Fia. Gina Baxter, his wife, is sort of taking the lead on this because we know that Fia has been having some questions of faith ever since Rocco was killed as it pertains to God. And they are worried about her not believing in God, having a problem with God. And so they've called the priest in to kind of gather her together, right? And I'm sure slightly in the back of his mind, Mr. Baxter is hoping that this will pull Fia away from Adam, without him having to get too involved in the situation. I mean, he more likely than not, after Carlo is freed and found not guilty by Judge Desiato and the jurors, he may still plan to kill Judge Desiato and Adam. We don't know. But it'll make it a little bit easier if Fia is not so enthralled and in love with Adam at the time that he does it. So he's hoping that this will work in his ultimate plan and favor. Fia makes a very valid point to her mother and the priest about Abraham. And it's so funny because I kind of thought about Abraham and him being required to sacrifice his son earlier on, probably around episode 3 or 4. I was thinking about that as it pertained to Judge Desiato and Adam. So it was funny to hear Fia now bring it up in script in this episode 9. And I think she had very valid points. I definitely think that there is absolutely nothing wrong with questioning God. I do feel like upon a deeper introspect that Fia could have learned a lot more about the story of Abraham and his son, and could have benefited from it. That it wasn't really about killing his son. It was about his willingness to follow what the Lord had told him to do, no matter how it hurt him, And so her mother says, do you love him? No. Fia meant God. Mrs. Baxter meant Adam. Do you love Adam? And Fia was like, yeah, oh yeah, I love Adam. No, I don't love God. It just came out in this way. And I thought, oh gosh. It was just a really good conversation. Like, it was a really good moment. It was emotional, and it was cathartic. I don't know. It's just like a really, really good moment. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about this whole conversation. And she tears off, and goes on about her way. And yes, of course, I love Adam. And she tears off. And later on, she's sitting in the study, and her dad is in the chair, and she's laying on the sofa reading. And he asks her how much. And she says, how much what? And she says, how much do you love him? And she says, a lot. I love him a lot. And he says, I want to meet Adam. And Fia says, when? He says, now, tonight, I'd like to meet him. And she smiles, and she gets all gleeful, and she texts Adam, and she tells him that she wants him to come over. At the same time, we see Adam's phone vibrate and ring, and Judge Desiato is coming in from his run, and Adam is heading out to Fia's, to the Baxters, and his dad says to him, hey, where are you going? And he's like, Dad. And he's like, oh, okay, so you're going to see a girlfriend, right? And he's like, well, yeah. He says, well, what time will you be back? And Adam says, I don't know. And Judge Desiato says, I'll wait up on you. And that is how the episodes ends. And you know what I think? I've been thinking about this ever since I did episodes 6 through 8. I thought to myself, wouldn't it be funny if Judge Desiato did all of this, all of the deaths that have come from his lying and his deception and his need to save his son above all else? Wouldn't it be funny if something stupid happened, like Adam had asthma attack and died, or choked on a piece of popcorn and died, slipped in the shower and bumped his head and died? Like, not wishing death on Adam, but this is kind of how it works, that thing that you covet the most, that you have coveted to the point where all other things be damned, ends up just crumbling in between your fingers, and you end up losing it in futility, right? Like, that would be a fitting punishment for Judge Desiato. Outside of being exposed, you've treated Adam like this delicate flower. And wouldn't it be crazy if he were to just end up losing Adam in death, and also being like, I don't know what episode 10 brings, but this has been a crazy, crazy ride, not just from a moral standpoint or a spiritual standpoint, but I think it really speaks a little bit more to how faithful are you to your standards? How faithful are you to your morals and to your ethics? And if those morals and ethics are tried in a really serious way, are you able to, like Abraham, go ahead and take one for the team, believing in faith that God's will is perfect, or it's the right thing to do regardless, putting all things aside and just willing to do what you believe is right or godly if you believe in God? Or are you going to fudge the report? Are you going to move the needle? Are you going to lie and deceive in order to keep that thing that you covet so much, as opposed to keeping your standards, as opposed to keeping your morals and your ethics? It's a very interesting point. This is a very interesting story, and I think that's a very interesting conversation to have. You guys tell me what you think and put it down below. And until next time, honeybees, mwah, 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 I holla.